On this episode of the After the Timeout podcast, we are joined by Ryan Gensler, assistant women's basketball coach at the University of Illinois. We talked to Coach Gensler about moving up the ladder in the coaching profession, putting together a recruiting class as a recruiting coordinator, and balancing being a coach and a young father. As always, thank you for listening to the After the Timeout podcast.
All right, Coach. So we like to start every segment with what we call the opening tip. We just wanted you to tell us about your journey, right? You've kind of done everything: a GA, a Dobo, assistant, recruiting coordinator, been different areas of the country, right? All kinds of different experiences. So we just wanted to, especially you being here new to Illinois, get our listeners to know you a little bit and kind of where you're from and what you've been doing, and then maybe a little bit about the program, what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I grew up in Syracuse, New York. So obviously basketball was king up there, and made my way to St. Joseph's University, where I was a manager and practice player as an undergrad for the Hawks. Loved it. Spent all my time in the office doing old film exchange, doing whatever I could for the coaches, and really kind of fell in love with the game. And I had some really good advice from one of my good friends who was also getting into coaching. He was a student assistant for Kirk Ferentz up in Iowa. His dad was a former offensive and defensive coordinator at Syracuse, Mark DeLeon. And he said, right, if you're interested, you got to do it now. And you got to get into coaching, and you got to just dive head first. Like, you can't be wishy-washy about it, because it's a tough industry to break into, learning everything that you need to learn. You got to just go and do it. And so I threw myself at it and my junior year, and really, tried to network as best as I could to, get that next step and get that ball rolling. And fortunate for me, I was able to land a GA spot at Providence College with Phil Seymour. Phil had worked with John Beilein for a number of years in his path, and John Beilein's cousins were the Nylans in Syracuse, and Tom Nyland was the old athletic director at Lemoyne College in Syracuse, and his son was actually someone who gave me a ride to school every morning, was my next door neighbor. So that's kind of how I got in the door with Phil at Providence, and he loved that Beilein connection, and we hit it off right away, and that kind of streamlined me to be their ops person. A couple months into the job, the operations person took another job elsewhere, and so he didn't really want to hire anyone, and he just said, hey, he called me the R. He said, hey, R, can you do this job? And I said, sure, coach, why not? So I just got thrown into the fire and did the ops job for the opening year. They ended up hiring someone the following season, and I helped her a little bit, but was able to finish my graduate assistantship and get my master's in counseling, which I loved. I worked at a local high school for my internship hours, and really got an understanding that, it's not just coaching. It's not just X and O's. Like 90% of the job is relationship building, and really taking care of the whole person of our student athletes. So that was a really big step for me, and just being young, but understanding what this job actually entailed. So from there, I was able to get tap into the upstate New York roots again, and get involved at St. Bonaventure University as an assistant coach. Jim Crowley was from Binghamton, New York, and really loved, the central New York connection. So caught lightning in a bottle there as we went to the Sweet 16 at Bonnie's. My very first year, I was super spoiled in college athletics. My first year with one of the smallest schools in the country, with one of the smallest budgets in the country, going to the Sweet 16. And I just thought that's how it went. And it was an awesome opportunity. He taught me a lot. He's a Moneyball guy, Oakland A's guy. So he opened my mind into different ways of thinking, because you had to think differently and only in New York. But it also allowed me a great opportunity to really learn the craft there. There's not a lot to do over there. So, getting involved with ball, really studying it, really kind of honing your skills as a coach was something that I really took a lot of pride in, and that he allowed you to do. So I'm exceptionally grateful for him for that opportunity, because that really springboarded me forward. Got on it at Loyola, Maryland with Joe Logan. He was a St. Joe guy, had worked for Cindy Griffin, a Jesuit school similar to St. Joe's where I went to college. Was a recruiting coordinator there, helped them transition into the Patriot League, which was kind of cool. They recruited kind of a different level kid as far as academics. And while I was in Baltimore, I would frequent Philadelphia, where my old stomping grounds were. And one night at Finn McCool's, local Irish pub there, I met my wife, and the rest, they say, is history. We ended up moving down to Gainesville, Florida, and I got on as a video coordinator there. She went there to work with her company, 160 over 90, a marketing company that was servicing University of Florida. And so, we set up shop there, and a couple of years into that, Amanda Butler, got let go, and Shauna got the job at Dayton, and we reconnected. She was an assistant coach at Providence, so everything kind of came full circle there, and we moved and got married. Coming up on our 5-year wedding anniversary here on the 20th, and do the Dayton deal, and now we're at Illinois. But I can't thank Shauna enough for taking a chance on me to work with her at Dayton, as we had. I had 5 really good years with her. She had 6, and multiple conference championships, multiple NCAA tournament appearances, and that paved the way to this opportunity at Illinois, where I think it's an unbelievable school from an academic standpoint, which really took me by surprise. I didn't know much about the university when the opportunity kind of first presented itself, and the more I researched it, the more I understood that it's in the upper echelon of the Big Ten as far as academics, and I think that's an unbelievable sell. I think once kids get on campus and they start meeting with the professors, the people that work and service the student athletes, they get a much better understanding of what kind of a high level institution it is. And that has given me a lot of juice on the recruiting trail to really talk passionately about it, but talk passionately about it because I believe it. And I've been able to see it in 5 or 6 short weeks there so far.
All right. So let's go into that. You mentioned your family and your travels. We talked a little bit about before we got on here. Right, you're a dad, you're a husband, son, all that stuff. So as a college basketball coach, I guess just as a coach in general, how do you balance that work-life balance, right? Because we all know when it's basketball, right? And you got added of the high school coach and all that. So how do you find that balance to kind of make everything work?
It's a challenge, and I think the day that you think you have it figured out is the day that you're wrong, because it's a constant challenge to figure that out. I think it's really important to prioritize your family. My wife is a saint. She's a saint for everything that she does in taking care of the household, and also raising our son, and kind of reminding me at times to reprioritize things. And that's really important, and you can get astray from that really quickly because you're so competitive. You're so in the moment of trying to win the day for your school and for your players and for recruits and for everyone else, that you can easily get sidetracked into losing focus of who's most important in your lives. That if the world ended tomorrow, who do you want to be surrounded with? And it's certainly your family. And I think the really cool thing about why I love working with Shauna is that, she really instills those family values within the program. And so they're really interwoven into, how we want to do things. So, often families invited, to participate in a lot of things that we do with the team, whether that's road trips, whether that's, official visits, tailgates, things like that, which is really nice because then you're able to blend both of those things together. And I think it's really cool for the players to see me as a father, see me as a husband as well, and not just as a coach or, someone, in that practice setting or basketball setting all the time. And I think when you can kind of humanize it, I think that's when you can help really build relationships because we're just regular folks at the end of the day.
First of all, I just wanted to go back to, he said Finn McCool's, so now Illinois listeners can relate because there is a Finn McCool's in our area as well.
Is there really?
There is.
Well, that might be the first date night that I take my wife.
That would be full circle.
Yeah.
We wanted to just hit on, you kind of talked about Bonaventure and Loyola, Maryland and Providence and Florida, et cetera. Can you kind of just take us through maybe something you learned from each stop or maybe something unique about each stop? I know before we came on, we kind of talked about the the Champaign wins, but maybe just something you learned or grew from each of those stops.
Yeah, I think, Providence certainly taught me just work ethic, juggling a couple of different hats with that, juggling school all at the same time. I left the office when the sun was down every night, and that was very normal. And that was nice because you were surrounded by a lot of other graduate assistants. There's a lot of GAs at Providence that help the athletic department. And so it was nice to be in that environment with a lot of other ones that were similar. So that really taught me, the work ethic part of it. St. Bonaventure taught me simplicity. Obviously, the landscape around it is very simple. The people there are very passionate, but live simple lifestyles and love it. For me, and that really correlated to the basketball court as well, because what we ran was simple. The things that we valued were simple. We didn't want to turn the ball over. We wanted to take high percentage shots. Like, it sounds really normal basketball speak, but like that was what was really ingrained in the players. You weren't going to see a player take a bad shot. If you saw a player turn the ball over, they were coming out of the game. I mean, we led the conference in fewest turnovers. We led the conference in field goal percentage, both offense and defense. And, it was kind of like an Army-Navy style basketball, but that taught me a different way of thinking on things when everyone wants to play fast and everyone wants to, and, you just see the other side of it. It's like, well, the other team can't score if they don't have the ball. And, you'll always be in the game against some of the better teams if you're not turning the ball over, you're taking good shots, you're making them, and you're making it tough for the offense to score it. So, we were never going to outmatch anyone. So that was kind of our neutralizer and kind of an Army-Navy type style. And it was kind of ahead of the time because we were running 5-out stuff, like right before the Warriors really popularized it. And we didn't have a big post. We wanted a post player that could shoot the three. We wanted to play with 4 guards and spread you and make it challenging. And I think it was kind of revolutionary at the time. And turns out that's how everyone wants to play now. So that was kind of cool. Loyola, taught me a lot from, I would say probably just from a player relationship standpoint. Our head coach, Joe Logan, really put the players first and a lot of what he thought about on a daily basis, and just kind of their mental well-being and, making it a great student athlete experience. So that was definitely something that, I learned from him outside of some good XOs. He was really sharp on the board and what we ran. And then, Florida was definitely culture building. You get to that level, and Amanda Butler was really good with how she built her culture, how she named it, how she branded it, how she reinstilled it on a daily basis, and really, had the players believe it and carry out the message. And they really bought into it. And then, certainly at Dayton now, before Illinois with Shauna, it was, kind of a cultivation of all those things. It was, her one-way culture with a head coach that still, worked like an assistant coach. There was nothing that she wouldn't do. She didn't have head coach syndrome in any aspect of the program. There's not anything that she would ask us to do that she wouldn't have done or would do. So it was really empowering to see a leader, really be in the trenches with you, and kind of, be there through the thick and the thin, with those highs and lows of recruiting battles, highs and lows of games. She, just had that great passion that, that she carried over with her when she was an assistant coach. And, certainly that message has kind of stayed the same, in these opening weeks at Illinois. And I think it's a total credit to her that, she's been able to bring a lot of the people, a lot of those ingredients from that Dayton culture, even a Calamity McIntyre who was at University of Texas, an Elite 8 program, to be able to bring her back to this culture I think speaks volumes to the things that we do and how much belief there is in Coach Green and in the program.
So now that we've kind of gotten to know you, let's kind of get into just some aspects we wanted to hit with you.
Yeah.
We've seen that, you're a recruiting coordinator. Todd and I, as we say, joke with every guest, we really like to do our homework. I think sometimes guests are kind of flabbergasted at what we find, but you've worked as a recruiting coordinator. For the listeners out there that maybe are, high school or junior high coaches or young college coaches, for you, what are some keys to putting together a recruiting class and what are some things that you look for that are maybe uncoachable? We'll kind of start with those two.
Yeah, I think, I say it all the time. My wife makes fun of me because I say it all the time. It's, you got to have a chip on your shoulder. You can't be the cool kid in the gym. That shows right away. I think for us, we always want the hardest workers. I think anytime that hardworking DNA matches with the work ethic of our coaches, the kids can get exponentially better. And that's something that we really believe in the player development. So first and foremost, like, you've got to be hardest worker, and that's got to show in your game, whether that's, diving on loose balls, being first for the floor, rebounding outside of your area, and then, just how you carry yourself on the defensive end. Do you shy away from guarding? Do you, want to guard the best player? Those kind of things. And you can kind of tell that real early, kind of just what that player's demeanor is like. So you got to have that demeanor for us first and foremost, that you got to kind of look the part. We want the best player on the floor, and you got to look like it and act like it. And you can't be too cool to do the stuff that makes the best the best. So for me, it's those things right from the get-go. If you're not willing to do any of those things, then it's going to be really tough to sell you to Coach Green. But we love everyone to be able to shoot the ball from the perimeter, or just shoot the ball in general. And I don't mean like you've got to, lead the team in 3-point shooting. We focus a lot on the fundamentals of shooting, of keeping a tight pocket, holding your follow through, making sure that your feet are right. So we want everyone to be able to shoot the ball on the floor. So for, our guards, we like them to be 3-level scorers. We like them to be able to shoot the three, hit the pull up, and get all the way to the basket, kind of contrary to the modern threes or layups concept that you hear so often in NBA, WNBA, and some college teams. But even our forwards, we want to be able to shoot the ball. So versatility is a big key for us. Everyone's got to be able to handle the ball. Everyone's got to be able to shoot the ball. So having that kind of chip on your shoulder with some versatility is definitely going to get you noticed. And then, as far as, you mentioned like a recruiting class, are you talking like what gets you noticed, and what's the best practice on their side?
I would say from the time, maybe you guys, I coach collegiately a little at the D3 level. And I know sometimes, you'll write down a list of the people you see and kind of take our listeners through like that creation of that list, to making those phone calls, to doing those visits, kind of the whole, putting the recruiting class together.
Sure. So, we're at the gym, this upcoming weekend, we're going to be out watching. So yeah, I'll be able to write down a few players from every team that I see. And then, I kind of go and I'll kind of write what kind of level I think they are by them with whatever skill set they have. So, I come off the road, I kind of compile a master list from that weekend that I've seen, and then kind of set up a call sheet for myself to reach out to those club coaches and say, hey, I'd love to talk to, so-and-so, about the weekend, and I'd love to set up a phone call to talk with them. And so really it's the ones that I know that are going to perhaps be offerable in the future are the ones that I really want to get on the phone right away. The ones that I think are still emerging and can get to our level, just given a little bit more time and practice and development. I'm still reaching out to talk to them. So I really want to get just a touch on everyone that I saw that I really liked. And then from there, nowadays we're progressing to, those initial phone calls of, just introducing the school and the university and a little bit about what makes our culture unique, to possibly, if they're, an offerable player, setting up a Zoom and getting to, meet their family and see some people face to face, electronically, and then maybe asking them to come to campus, at some point in the future. And we're big on relationship building. So very rarely, if ever, Shauna is going to offer a kid sight unseen, or, I come off the road and I said, I really like this kid, she's a no-brainer offer. Shauna will say to me, we'll get her on the phone, have her call me. So I'll have her call Coach Green, and she'll, tee up a phone call. They'll talk for a little while, and then she'll probably want 2 or 3 more of those type of conversations to really build up that relationship, to make sure that it's a good fit on both sides before she tosses out an offer. If she, she'll obviously watch some film, watch the play, those kind of things. But we're all about relationship building. We want to know about the player. We want to know about their family. We're going to talk to your trainer. We're going to talk to your high school coach. We're going to talk to your club coach. We want to holistically kind of understand who you are, what makes you tick, and then make it to the point where if we offer you, you're in a position to say, yeah, this feels good. I want to come to campus and I'll probably take it. So that's kind of a little bit of the process of how we do things. Obviously, every class, you need something different. I think the transfer portal is bananas. So the days of saying, well, we don't need a center in that class, or we don't need a point guard in that class are gone. I mean, you have to recruit everyone. And honestly, John, like we look at D2 and D3 kids who are in the portal. Like when we first got a job at Illinois, there was a D2 player of the year that I was looking at and trying to see like, hey, would she fit this? So, I mean, it's really every level, if you can play, we're looking at you at this point.
So then let's kind of just build on that a little bit. For you talked about shooting in your last response, but what are some key skills you're looking for just as that player base when they come in? Whether it be shooting, whether it be individual defense, kind of what are those key skills you're looking for as the base? And then you kind of talked about the speaking to the AAU coach or the travel coach, kind of how do you establish those relationships with, now that you moved to Illinois, with the Illinois high school coaches, with the Illinois, travel coaches, kind of a key part there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what first and foremost, you've got to be in shape. Like that's got to be first and foremost, you got to be in great shape, because in order for you to learn, you can't be thinking about how tired you are. So like, first and foremost, you've got to be able to take coaching while still breathing and still functioning, doing everything. Defensively, we say you got to guard your yard and just keep people in front. We're more of a pack line defensive team. So for us, if you can just keep your hips closed and slide, we call it a 2-dribble war. So if, offensive players looking to attack via 2 dribbles, you just got to stay in front of them for those 2. We'll have a gap, defender, will have some people behind. And if you can do that, then you're doing your job right. So just that kind of lateral quickness is something that we look for defensively. Offensively, like I mentioned before, is the versatility piece. We just had one of our players come back from the Seattle Storm training camp, a Dayton player who's now on staff with us, Jenna Ciccone. And she said, Coach, you'd be so surprised in the training camp how many players couldn't pass with their left hand. She's like, I had to smile because Shauna, we do those remedial passing drills in the early part of the season, or, we do our ball transfer during the middle of the season, and you got to be able to pass with your left hand, pass with your right hand, have the footwork to do it. So feet, passing and shooting, and just being able to dribble with both hands. So I know it sounds like the ideal, type player, but, the ones that are just too heavy on one side of that are kind of a turnoff sometimes. You got to be, we want complete players, and we want players that want to be able to work towards being, complete on that, because I think the harder you are to guard, the better the team is going to be, because everyone's so good at scouting now and so detailed in how they defend people that if you take something away from a shooter and they can't shoot anymore, well, they're useless on the court. So they got to be able to go by someone, or, come off a ball screen and shoot behind the screen, or come off a ball screen and hesitate and attack the big. And I think lastly is just finishing. Too many kids just can't finish very well in the lane. We're big proponents of playing off of 2 feet. I think a lot of times kids just go off of 1 and just kind of hope and pray. We spend a ton of time, usually the first 5 to 10 minutes of practice is all based on finishing. It's something that we identified at Dayton that we struggled with after a couple of years and wanted to clean up. And that's going to be a point of emphasis from day one for us at Illinois, of making sure that we're able to finish in every way possible.
Well, you made, before I turn over to Todd, you made Todd happy. You talked about footwork. So
that's it.
I know Todd was happy there.
And remind me the second part of that question about the relationships with the coaches.
Yeah, for you, moving from obviously from Florida to now Ohio to Illinois, how do you go about establishing relationships with, the local high school coaches?
Yeah, I think you just got to be available to them. I think, as we build out our staff, we're fortunate to have some good support staff roles. So them getting like a database of a lot of the area coaches. Just the other day, we were talking about, all the coaches that, made the Elite Eight and beyond in the Illinois State playoff tournament. We wanted to get in touch with right away to help build a team camp list for the following year. We weren't able to have much of a camp season this year because our up and practice facility is under renovation, and we just don't have the court space right now to be able to do it. But I think what I found when I got to Dayton is trying to connect with a few of those coaches, and you got to go to them. I made several trips to Columbus, a trip to Cincinnati to meet with them, get a coffee, talk about their players, talk about what interests them, talk about how we can help them and their programs in the future, invite them up to campus, invite their teams up to campus to watch practice, to be available. So, I think we'll be taking a similar approach here at Illinois and getting out to see people, as opposed to just constantly trying to get them down to campus and make it a one-way street. We want to make sure that we get out and see people in their element and do that within the reasons of compliance.
All right, I'm going to go I'm going to add a little bit something here, but let's go video and breaking down film, right? Obviously, your younger days as an assistant coach, the head coach is like, I want all the pick and rolls and this and that. And
depending on how long when you started, it's a lot different than it is today. I think it's a little bit easier today to break down all that stuff. But let's compare and contrast. In your younger days, right, when you first started, maybe what are some of the things you thought you were looking for, right? And you want to look for, as compared to now, some of the 2 or 3 things you're looking for each opponent. And obviously that depends on staff and things like in general, right? Compare and contrast, like back when you first started, you're like, oh, great. And then now you're like, oh, that was, because I think that been there.
I'll never forget delivering my first scout at Providence. We were in a tournament in the Bahamas, and I had Alabama as it, and it wasn't supposed to work out that we were supposed to play Alabama. I was kind of like the backup to the backup, and some weird stuff happened, and we ended up playing them. So when I broke their stuff down, I thought more meant better. And I think, now I think less is a lot more. The kids are able to retain a lot more. I thought, making the other team look like superstars and unbeatable was good, because you wanted to see them and make them take them seriously and everything. But it also can be discouraging. Like, how the heck are we ever going to stop this? This kid just had a turnaround, fade away, like against great defense. Like, how are we going to stop this kid? So I think in my early days, it was always more and spectacular. And now it's a little bit less, on the personnel side. How many times are you going to, show, Steph Curry making an open 3? The guy can shoot, right? Like, it's like, how many clips of Steph Curry do you need? Caitlin Clark can shoot from Iowa. Like, do we need to see one more from half court? Like, she's got range, 4-point range, 5-point range. Like, so I think, in teaching your players, you've got to kind of invite them to understand themes of the game. So let's show them some themes of taking away space. Let's show them some themes of when that player struggled against the defense that we're about to play in. And I think interweaving those themes to get the players to be able to recite it easier when they need to and remember is vital. It's funny, you had mentioned like the young dad thing earlier, and like I have a track record for horrible dad jokes, and I tend to sometimes throw those into my scouting reports and how I'll equate different things. So when we're playing a certain team, I'll say, with the cheat code here is here. Like, it is, if you want to beat their defense, this is how you beat it every time. If you drive baseline and this drift pass is there, that's the cheat code, because they're collapsing hard on the paint. The players would be like, cheat code, coach, you've been playing Grand Theft Auto? Like, I was like, no, in my heyday maybe, but so trying to simplify things in ways that they'll understand and remember, as quirky as it is. So there'll be times in scouting, in the scouting report, that I'll lead the scout with a video, or I'll lead the scout with a 30-second, theme of what's about to happen. Like, we were playing a team once that was going to really get up and play it, really try to deny and really try to, swipe at the ball and really get up in you. And if you just got past that first line of defense, they were horrible at rotating, and you were able to get all the way to the basket. And, I called that the Wizard of Oz effect. And I led the scout with showing the clip of the Wizard of Oz of the Great Wizard, in that final scene, and then them pulling that curtain back. And it's just a little guy behind there. And I was like, this game is the Wizard of Oz. Like, it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy and so grand and powerful, but just peel back that curtain. You go forward, you're willing to go forward, you're going to take some contact, you're going to be rewarded at the basket. And it was cool because a few years later we were playing a team and like a player said, hey, this is like a Wizard of Oz game. And I was like, that's exactly right. So you never know what's going to like kind of hit their memory, but I would say it's less nowadays and more to how they can relate over a 30-game season, what makes each scout a little bit different.
Well, I'm going to follow up before I go to the next point here. You obviously said less, but do you find more, obviously I've found in scouts, like visual stuff is so much better, right? You're like, hey, we got this scout report. And they're like, yeah, and you got to remind them until now to be like, hey, don't be the one who leaves it, right? Because they're going to look at it like, but if you put the video stuff, they kind of remember it and tie it in. How do you like, I know you talked about that a little bit, but, how do you kind of condense that for your kids? What are you looking for? Like, if you're teaching, say, let's do pick and roll, right? Because everybody does. How do you give that to your kids? What do you do as far as video wise or visual wise to show them?
Yeah. So like, we'll go through all the personnel and like, we're 5 to 6 clips of every, personnel wise, for some of the better players, maybe a couple more. We'll show them kind of some offensive themes, defensive themes, and we always do pick and roll because we're a pretty pick and roll like centered team on both sides. Like our pick and roll defense will change at different times. So, when it's, say we're scouting you, Todd, and, we say like, hey, Todd's teams have struggled against the hedge. Here's 3 or 4 clips of them struggling against the hedge. And this is why we're going to hedge at certain times. Or here's certain times that we're going to trap it because we want to get the ball out of Todd's hand because he's been playing unbelievable out of the ball screen. And then for us, because we play with a ton of ball screens, we want to show our players like, hey, this is what their typical ball screen defense is. So, if they're switching, hey guys, let's look to throw it back and in against the switch. Or, if they're going to just show low with their big kid, hey, like they're going to show low, our pulls are going to be there right at the elbow, or hesitate and look to attack. So having that idea ahead of time, to your point, is vital, that you've got to be able to show them the proof of why we're going to do what we're going to do, as opposed to just saying on paper, like you mentioned, hey, we're just going to hedge the ball screen this game.
All right, so now let's move on to your transition here, right? Same thing. You almost have to scout yourself, right? When you take over, come to a new program, new conference, different things. You gotta kind of be prepared for that. So what was that process like for you guys of, preparing yourself as coaches to help your players of, this is what skills this player has. This is some of the things they did well in the season. Obviously you want to look ahead, Big Ten conference, like, okay, what are they doing to us? And also tie in your system stuff. So how did you guys go through that process?
Yeah, I actually, when we first got there, Coach Green had him for a couple workouts, and then I got there. I was one of the first assistants to get there, and she did not watch any film on the Illinois players for probably the first month. She wanted a total clean slate of looking at them on the floor to see how they really were. She didn't want to have any preconceived notions about, their style or strengths and weaknesses. She wanted to totally evaluate it from day one. And I think that was really good, and really good for the players too, to not have any kind of biases of what statistically or what on film showed. Because, every style is different. Nancy's style is one way, our style will be another. And so I think for us, it was just going through that evaluation process of seeing what we valued in those practices, how they responded to it, and how they just responded in general and how hard they played. So for us, that was probably the first month. And then, you go back and kind of watch them against, particular defenses and how they handle things and how they've done certain actions that we like to run and whatnot. So that process is kind of ongoing, as we really only had them for about 4 weeks before they left to start taking finals. And then we get them back, I think the first or second week in June, they come back to campus, and we'll be able to work with them again and kind of have a whole team there. We only had 5 when we were there for those 4 or 5 weeks, but we should have a whole team in that second week of June and be able to do it from day one. But I think the big part of that will be film evaluation of what we're doing, not necessarily from years past. I think we'll have a heavy emphasis of kind of staying in the moment and staying into what we're trying to, make the themes for our teams.
So let's kind of build on that just before we move on. I wanted to talk about, you're coming in, you're a new staff. Some of the kids are new. Some of the kids are obviously from Coach Faye's staff. So how do you go about building that culture of, we all have our sayings, we all have our, but how do you really go about doing that?
Yeah, and it's tough too, because only having 5 there for those first 4 weeks, you don't want to overwhelm them with so much information that they're just like paralyzed in the workout of the sayings and whatnot. So to be honest with you, we had certain sayings that we teach and whatnot. But it's funny, like even breaking the huddle, like Coach Green had them break the huddle however they wanted to break the huddle, with whatever they wanted to say. And she kind of said, once we get the whole team here together, we'll kind of teach the way that we do things once, and let everyone kind of adapt to it from there. But, I think the kids were really receptive because they like ball and they want to win. So I think, anytime with a new staff, it can kind of be a little challenging. But for these, the 5 players that stayed, they were really receptive. They loved basketball. They were open to coaching and to doing things the way that we wanted to do it. And we also allotted them the time to fail within the practice and do it. We weren't going to try to throw a million things at them. We wanted them to get, their footwork down on their catch and shoots, wanted to get their footwork down in the post, wanted to get their footwork to be able to, come off the 2 feet in the paint and kick, or, up and under. And so like all those kind of things, we just drilled really, really hard in those first 4 or 5 weeks to try to just get a solid foundation, and then we'll build from there. How we'll teach the entire group, I think one of the pluses of having a lot of familiarity on the staff is, and especially having a former player like Jenna Giacone, I've tasked her with kind of coming up with a glossary of terms, so that we'll be able to use some technology that we use to share film or scouting reports on their phones. We'll actually be able to put like a glossary together of terms that we'll say what they mean, what they look like, some film attached to it, so that the players can always go back and be like, all right, when they say wolf, what do they mean? Oh, wolf means that someone's coming to tap the ball behind. Or, we say, we're going to read the ball screen. Here's what that means, like all those kind of different nuances. Because I think they look at it sometimes, they're like, wait, what'd you say? We want to kick the ball up the street or across the street? What neighborhood are we living in? We're on the court. Like, so like even that stuff when we were doing our Phoenix transition in the first couple of weeks was really funny. And but we didn't want them to get paralyzed by that stuff. We wanted them to just kind of be able to go and play and execute. And we'll scale it back up a little bit this summer.
And then just a little bit about, maybe this is a little bit more of an individual question, but, we talked a lot about in this episode, building up the program, building up the brand, building up, everything that has to do with the program. Just for our listeners, kind of talk about building yourself, building your own brand, promoting yourself as a coach. Obviously, you've worked with a lot of great people. And as we talked about a little bit in the beginning, it's kind of a little bit of who you know. But just kind of talk to our listeners, just kind of how you've built your own brand.
I think you just build it, just based on the work. I mean, that's something Shauna taught me at a very early age when I was a GA and she was an assistant coach at Providence. I mean, we got along great because we worked really hard, and, you saw that within each other. And I think there's really no substitute to the work in anything that you do in life. And I think the right people will notice. And, I've been fortunate to be around really good people, to have a solid network of people that cared about my development, gave me opportunities to try new things, gave me opportunities to fail and succeed, and allowed me opportunities to come back from that. So my advice for any of that would just don't shy away from the work, try to do more than you can, ask for a little bit more. I think always ask is a big thing. It's just, is there anything else I can do? And you're going to get someone that's going to say, hey, would you mind trying this? Or, and then just ask a lot of questions to make sure that you refine it. But the right people will notice. And then, develop relationships, as you go through this. I think with young people in particular in college basketball, the one knock on that is, well, they don't have recruiting experience. They don't have recruiting experience. I need coaches that can go get me players. And that's a funny saying, because there's no magical pixie dust that a coach picks up the phone. They're like, oh, I have to play for them. It develops over time. It develops over a real relationship. And I think for young assistants or young people in the profession, the only way that you show how to relationship build is to build within your network. So handwrite a note of a coach that worked with your boss, and because those are the networks that you want to be involved with. That's something that I did when I was at St. Joe's and Providence and even Bonaventure was, constantly, write those people, and it shows the persistence. It shows that you're willing to go the extra mile, because that's going to be the difference maker in recruiting. Is everyone has similar pitches. Everyone has, great basketball and universities and all that, but it's the people that make these places, and what makes these people different than the other ones. We used to say at Dayton all the time, because we would recruit against the Big Ten all the time. I laugh. Everyone's like, "What's it like recruiting in the Big Ten?" Now I was like, "We've been doing it for 6 years." It's nothing new on that. But we used to say all the time, a conference doesn't make you smile on a bad day. A conference doesn't walk you to class when times are tough, or a conference doesn't make you feel better after a tough loss. It's going to be the people that are there. And that was something that we harped on when we were at Dayton. That's something that we'll harp on when we're at Illinois, recruiting against, some great programs out there, is trying to make the people separators from everyone else that they're talking to.
All right, so we're going to head into our last two segments here. We're going to start with our 30-second timeout. Your chance to talk about anything you want. Anything that's important to you. Doesn't even have to be basketball related. Lately, we've been having people flip it on us and ask us questions, and it's all good. So your very loose 30 seconds. We're not gonna be hounding you, giving you the second horn.
No, that's fine. I love those officials, by the way. Everyone stand up.
Yeah, exactly. Second horn. Come on, guys. And you're the assistant in the back. You're like, what do you want me to do? I can't do anything here. So your 30-second timeout. All you, coach.
I'll keep it within the basketball realm. Well, when I was at University of Florida, I wasn't an assistant coach. I was a video coordinator. So one of the passion projects that I got to work on was the Golden State Warriors and Miami Heat had an article come out about the power of touch and how they teams that high five more were more connected teams played better, played stronger. The old Coach K, five fingers, one fist kind of philosophy. And I charted it for 2 years at Florida, and the amount of touches that we had in practice, and we gave more value to picking someone up off the floor, chest bumps, even the kids on the bench, who would go up and down. So I challenge, you guys and your teams and the basketball communities that listen to this is, value those because they matter. How tight your huddles are, how connected are your teams. That's something that I've been really passionate about since actually studying. And it's something that we'll bring with us to Illinois. But I challenge you, as you watch the WNBA and NBA finals here over the next couple months, see who those most connected teams are and really see the connectivity piece. And it's really kind of special when you start noticing those little nuances because those are the teams that ultimately find the most success.
All right, I got to ask before we go to the next one. How did you even go about doing that? Seriously, you think about it, I'm sure you've probably found that there's so many interactions that you didn't even realize, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, they went over there and talked during this while I'm over here doing this.
So yeah, your lens totally changes in practice. And like, that was the cool thing. You know, at Florida, we had a good staff of,
Right.
you know, people to actually film practice and tag practice and all that. So I was down there. And so like, literally my job is just to see like how connected we are as a team on a daily basis and chart it. So yeah, like when the players started figuring out that like I was legitimately like counting how many high fives or slaps, you know, they'd have going through a line, like they would go bananas. And like, just when they come out, they'd go up and then back down. And like our senior leader, Ronnie Williams, was incredible at it. And like, she would just go up and down, but like it mattered, and it helped with her teammates. It showed the bond. It showed she cared. It was really hard. Like I'm not a math guy. I was a language guy, English guy. So like, I'm sure my math wasn't immaculate, but you know, you start figuring out, all right, so she goes up and down the line twice. All right, that's 20. There's like 10 kids in the line. There's a couple out on the court. That's 20 touches. So like, I ended up having little symbols that like equated to 10 or 5 or, you know, things like that, or like A for all, you know. And then God, at the end of practice, when Amanda would be like, hey, Ryan, do you get those totals yet? And I'd be like, no, we got like 3 more kids to go, coach. I need you to filibuster for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, right.
But it was cool because
awesome.
it just changed your lens of what you look for.
So the best part about that is I remember reading that article and I was getting all excited. I'm like, all right, you know, we're gonna chart the touches in my program. We're gonna be all about this. And then COVID-19, and then I'm like, nobody touched.
It was
Nobody touched
honestly,
anybody anymore. Stop it.
You're so right. It takes me back to that because I died laughing because like we're like, we can't touch in the huddles. Like we can't even do pregame high fives. Like we can't do it. We're sitting across from each other. And honestly, like it was hard. And I think dialing it back up is going to be awesome to see, but you're so right. It was like the antithesis of everything that I believed in.
Yeah. You're like, never mind.
We had talked to Kelly Graves early in our podcast, and he was like, our kids can't even eat together. Like they couldn't eat together, nothing. It was crazy. The whole thing was, it's still a little goofy.
Have you guys seen those memes that are like, how do you explain this to kids like in like 60 years? And it's like, you know, baptisms where like the priest is like baptizing from 50 yards away, and like just like the silliest stuff that we had to
Why
do.
didn't nobody go near anybody at all? What is going on here?
It was like, yeah, we can all play basketball, but on the dead balls, let's wipe the ball off. I'm like, all right, well, they've been sweating on it for 10 minutes together, but let's wipe it off now.
New Jersey wouldn't let the officials touch the ball. So like the ball would go out of bounds, and literally they're like side bumping it, and like they're like pretending to play soccer with it to get it to the kids and stuff because they wouldn't touch it. Like, it's the most bananas thing I've ever watched on film.
But all the kids could touch it, right? That's crazy. Yeah. Don't worry about it, right? So the whole world went crazy for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So let's we finished with our final segment. We call it quick hitters. Oftentimes it has to do with sports or basketball. Some of the times it doesn't. We still go back to asking somebody what their favorite zoo animal was, but it's just a little bit of an opportunity for us to have a little fun with our guests at the end. So we're going to start off with, you know, you've lived in a lot of cities. Give us like your favorite late night. Like it's you talked about, you know, going home in the dark. It's a dark night in the season, real late, 11, 12, 1 in the morning. Your favorite spot to grab some food?
That's an easy one. That one was St. Bonaventure. That was third base wings. Third base, stop here before you go home was the tagline of the local bar.
I like it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And obviously Western New York, famous for their buffalo wings. They are insane, like really, really good, crispy, good size buffalo wings. So that was always in order, calling that in as soon as I got to the car to meet it there. Win, lose, or draw. That was always a highlight.
All right, so I'm going to tweak this one a little bit. I'm not going to go best college mascot because obviously you're in Illinois, so we don't want to put you in a bad spot. But in your high school, a JUCO, whatever, like you went to this place and you're like, oh man, that's pretty cool, or something unique or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I'll give you two. So as far as mascot, I have to defer to my alma mater, St. Joe's. The St. Joe
You can do
Hawk
that.
does not stop flapping for the entire game, which is just the kids on
Right.
full scholarship. That's just amazing in and of itself. And really, anyone who sees a St. Joe men's or women's team play live are like blown away. Like during the national anthem, he's got one hand over the heart, the other one's going up. Like they're like literally, even when he takes a sip of water, he's still flapping his wings. So that one was pretty cool. And then I'll never forget. I was in Philadelphia. I was watching Duke men play Temple men's basketball, and Temple had the home game at the Sixers arena, and it was the first time I'd seen like the lights go off, and they played Fireman by Lil Wayne, and it was like the lights came on, and like it was the hypest I've ever seen in arena, and it was a time and place thing that it was just, I was like, whoa, this is different, this is awesome. But there's just so many good college traditions across all of college sports. I think any game day live thing, you're going to pick up on something that's probably going to give you chills at a certain point, whether you like the opponent or you like the home team. It's that's what makes sports just awesome, and especially if you can get a loud atmosphere.
So you tell me the St. Joe's mascot has the most toned shoulders in the nation. If he's
they're training in the
circles, all that.
summertime, throwing on a DVD of a full game and just trying to, that just doesn't happen overnight.
Right. It's like back in the day, the Oregon Duck doing the push-ups, right, for football, dropping like 72 points.
Yeah.
That guy's or girls just ripping out push-ups.
Yeah.
All right, so you've moved to Illinois now. What's something you've noticed about basketball in Illinois so far?
I think just the level of excitement about basketball in Illinois is legit. Obviously the men's program has done unbelievably well as of late with Coach Underwood, and just the level of support that there is, and just kind of the enthusiasm for Coach Green. I mean, really, it was nutty. My wife was in there to house hunt, and she was at the game day spirit store, and she went to check out. And like the manager came up to her and was like, "Hey, are you Leanna Gensler by any chance?" And she was like, "Yeah, I am." It's like, "Oh, your husband's an assistant coach on the team?" She's like, "Yeah, he is." She's like, "Is this your son Jackson too?" And like he had read the whole bio, and she's like, "Ryan, that was a little different for me." But I think it's probably the level of enthusiasm, to be quite honest with you, and that permeates through the athletic department as well, and everyone being so welcoming and so supportive when we've had official visits up. I think they're ahead of the curve as far as the things that they're investing in recovery, and like our oven practice facility, and the things that they're bringing in for the recovery, from hyperbaric chambers to cryotherapy to you name it, they've got it, and it's just, it feels different than any place that I've been, as far as the wave of momentum behind us and behind the hiring of Coach Green.
All right, next one. I'm gonna tweak this one a little bit too. I just thought about this. You're going to a wedding, you got to look good, right? You got what's your favorite color? What color are you going with? What's your go-to color if like a big event?
Yep.
What do you go with?
It's really cliche, and honestly, if you asked me 10 years ago or you asked me 20 years ago, it'd be the exact same. It's orange and blue. Growing up in Syracuse, that was orange and blue. I mean, it was like,
yeah.
I told my dad I never thought I'd like be wearing orange and blue and it not be Syracuse, to be honest with you. So I have blue eyes, so I always try to bring a little blue, much to my wife's chagrin, who always asked me to match her outfits. But it's definitely a hint of blue and maybe a splash of orange here or there, just to be vibrant.
There you go.
Listen, before I get into from one guy with blue eyes to the other, you gotta play off.
Got to.
Play off. All right, so I kind of tweaked this one as well, but staying in that vein, what is your in-game apparel? Are you a suit guy? Are you a quarter zip guy? What's your in-game apparel?
I love a good suit. I'm old fashioned like that. I thank my wife every day. I used to try to pair jackets with slacks and try to, be to be a peacock out there with trying to look good and everything. And I just couldn't keep up with fashion. So she said, Ryan, just stick to a good suit and you'll never go wrong. So I've definitely done that. I do love the quarter zips, particularly love those on the road. It's just easier to pack those as opposed to trying to get the wrinkles out of a suit or a shirt.
Yeah.
You never know what the level of consistency of the iron in the hotel is like. So, but I do love a good suit.
You do have a great, for those of you listeners that don't follow him, Coach has got a really good suit coat on in his Twitter photo. He's got a real nice...
Cool story behind that. Real quick. So for my birthday, we had a really good dresser on staff, Simon Harris. I was actually the head coach at ETSU, and he had a guy in Pittsburgh where he was from that got him his suit. So my wife for my birthday got me connected with that guy. She said, I want him to do something a little different. Ryan's very traditional, get him outside of his comfort zone. And so that's what he did. And I've only worn that suit once, and it was for that championship game. And so I'm 1-0 in that suit. So I'm excited to be able to bring that out again sometime soon.
There you go.
All right. Next one, something you're looking to do maybe with your family or just experience now that you're living in Illinois. What's something you might want to do?
It's definitely reintroduced them to deep dish. I've heard a few good spots locally in Champaign. I think, being able to get up to Chicago in a couple hours, I definitely want to take the train up there. My son loves trains, obviously with having the train station right there in Champaign, super easy. So I think just being able to explore the whole state in that regard, while eating well in that same breath.
Yes,
that's exactly what we're looking for.
You will eat well in Illinois. And I can promise you. All right. So let's finish with, you had kind of talked about some coachy type sayings earlier in the episode. Do you have like a favorite or a go-to or like something where you'll say it and the players are like, here he goes again with his saying?
Probably not. That's a tough one. I wish you could ask some of my players because they definitely have a few that would rattle off. Definitely the chip on the shoulder one is something that I've said. I'm definitely an eyes up kind of guy as far as, always telling them to have their eyes up, always be a triple threat on the catch. I think that's off the top of my head. Those are the main ones that I think of, but I know my players could tell you. I know there's a few like really they'll tell you like I use ridiculous phrases or like the Wizard of Oz effect, so it's like stuff like that they would tell you like, Coach, sometimes he pulls out these things out of nowhere. And some of these analogies that he uses are kind of crazy sometimes, but they'll laugh, but then they'll remember it. And as long as they remember it, I'm great with it.
Well, Coach, first of all, as we end the episode here, welcome to Illinois and thanks for joining us. We really appreciated your time and having you on today.
Thank you guys so much. This was a special treat and excited to be here and to be able to follow the podcast going forward for all the great speakers you guys bring on.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, hosted by Todd Zazadil and Jon Plicky. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout, or subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. For show inquiries, you can email us at afterthetimeout@gmail.com. You can find all of our previous episodes on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts by searching After the Timeout. We appreciate you listening. Tune in next time for more coaching content in-game, out of the game, and anything in between.